Education will come to order. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Sandy, if you could please read our mission and vision statement and
Sure. Our mission statement is that Richmond Community Schools, we provide a quality education that empowers students to be successful in the global community. And our vision statement is to foster a culture of academic excellence, creativity, character, and ensuring that all students are prepared for success in an ever-changing world. Go ahead with roll call. Board Member Cunningham. Here. Board Member Gillis. Here. Board Member Rashawn. Here. Board Member Sutton. Here. Board Member Telto. Here. Board Member Stiers absent with notice. I am Board Member Fortuna. I have a quorum. We also do have our student representative here with us, Elizabeth Schaefer, and Kelsey McNamara is actually absent with notice. She's in the second grade.
Thank you very much. I'm looking for a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
Support. Thank you. Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. I'm looking for a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved.
Support. Any discussion?
I do have just a question. On the personnel report, I noticed that we were approving substitutes, and I'm not, like, is that something we normally have to do? Like, are they usually through, I guess I'm confused.
So when they're a retiree coming back to sub for us, we have to do it that way. So those retired educators are not able to work through a third-party vendor like Red Rover, Regu staff, I should say. And so you have to hire them directly through the district, although once that happens, they operate just like any other substitute would. They just pick up jobs, on a daily basis as needed.
Okay, so they're not like always in the, they're not like necessarily like the building.
Not like a bill substitute, no, they
as needed, but just have to be newly employed through us rather than.
Yeah, for those ORS regulations, you got it.
Okay, thank you.
Any other discussion?
Yep. My question is just for the two subs, the retireds that are subs. Their letters were dated 2/23 and 3/9, and I guess I just wonder why did we not approve these people before March 23rd?
I think one was right on the date of that meeting, it could have been, and
I think that's a typo. I don't think that that's accurate.
I'm sorry, February 19th and February 27th. I'm sorry. The 23rd and the 9th were our board meetings. February 19th was the one, and February 27th was the other. February 19th was before the meeting, last meeting in February, and then February 27th we had the March 9th meeting. So I just, what is the reason that it took so long? And have these people worked for us?
yes.
Can we just check?
Yeah, we
Sarah,
want to
check out and verify those dates first, please.
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, wait, so
Oh,
we don't,
sorry.
so the answer is we don't know, is that what?
Sarah, I'm questioning it.
I'm questioning the dates since I was out sick and so my assistant did a report, so I do want to double check.
Okay. And then, Billy, just my question, again, that I said I was going to ask about the Schedule B, the middle school district newsletter person that is still open, and is there a
So
problem?
Mr. Knight indicated he was still looking for someone. We haven't had another newsletter, so keeping in mind those are just
Okay.
those 3 times a year, so it wasn't as pressing, maybe if you will, just because we don't have another one coming up for a little while still. But
Okay.
Mr. Knight did indicate with me that he was still looking for somebody there.
So then the next one is the end of the year one, then is what you're saying? Okay.
Correct.
Okay.
Any other discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Next item on our agenda is our high school powerlifting state champions. Mr. Trenton, I believe, is going to assist, and if our board members could gather out front, we will do some handshaking.
And I'm inviting Coach Barrow up here with me too. I'm inviting Coach Barrow up here to talk. He loves to be in front of the camera. So I'm going to turn around. I can talk. So I'm really excited. It's always great when I get to come up here and talk talk about all the great things our kids are doing athletically. And, you know, and this has become kind of a yearly thing, so Coach Babb has got that on his plate, that I want to keep this a yearly thing, where we get to recognize our powerlifting state champions. So I've got 3 here that all 3 had stellar seasons and phenomenal meets at the end of the year. And I also want to let you know we got our powerlifting record board up in the weight room. So Coach Baba and I are going to work on putting all the numbers in there. And I think a couple of those we actually might have to change and update after these last couple of meets. So, which is a good thing. So, without further ado, winning her 2nd state title in a row, I'd like to welcome up Miss Leah DeMambro. Next, a junior winning her 1st state title is Miss Sophia Jackson. And winning his 2nd state title, and actually Brody signed with Northwood University last week to continue his powerlifting career over there. And in the process of winning this state title, Brody set 3 state records. Wow. Yep.
Okay, we're gonna.
Thank you.
We could have everybody just real quick. We're gonna go over there and take a picture.
Okay, our next item on our agenda is our budget discussion.
Hey, what is that? Mom, look.
So this evening, we have a couple of things to look at regarding the budget. Of course, we're still pretty early on. We do have the governor's recommendations, but nothing from the Senate or House yet.
We're doing budget.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't say what, I missed, turn my page, I'm sorry.
So we will be able to talk about how we want to approach enrollment, which option we would like to go with that. Again, take a look at the governor's recommendation in isolation at this point, since we have nothing from the House and Senate. So we'll go from there. And then we can look at some potential options for how to handle the differences that we will see with the anticipated budget. So options that we have for how we want to look at our enrollment as a starting point for planning for next year's budget. We have 3 potential ideas that we could go with that should be familiar and options that we normally would see. So this particular chart shows the last, I kind of zoomed in on just the last 3 years prior to now. And so you see the actual numbers for 25-26 have been put in. We just did finalize our count for February for the spring count. So these are the actual numbers that did go up to the state in that 25-26 chart. So we could take the option of really just staying the course and moving the kindergarten numbers up to 1st grade, the 1st grade numbers up to 2nd grade, and so on. Just moving everybody right in line across, and then taking, just kind of that close estimate for the early childhood and for the kindergarten, since that's not a guarantee. We don't know how many we have there quite yet. So if we take that approach, the estimate would be about 1,518. It is a reduction, and one of the things that we'll see is the graduating class this year at 119 students. That group of juniors coming in before it is only 102 students, so that group right there is a little bit of a loss. I will say I just carried over the kindergarten number, but based on, for instance, this year's kindergarten roundup compared to last year's, huge. I mean, so many more families there. We've heard, it sounds like all of our families who are currently in the preschool, even Head Start, all of those programs are very, very optimistic in coming to Richmond as kindergartners. So I would anticipate that kindergarten number will probably be higher and will balance out that loss that we're going to see in seniors that are graduating this year. But I wanted to make sure that you were kind of seeing almost a worst case scenario, a very conservative approach as we look at what could be the potential, because we are losing a relatively larger senior class compared to the junior class that will be seniors next year.
Are you looking, as you're just talking, do you want us to say anything as you go along, or wait until, what's your?
Why don't we go over the three options, maybe
Okay.
that will help, and then I can go back to any slide if you'd like me to go back to as we go through there. So this second option takes our enrollment and we look at a 5-year average of the last school year, so going back to 2020 to 2021 school year. And then kind of, again, so looking at that average across each of those school years, what kind of growth or difference we saw year to year as we go on. And then, again, taking that sort of conservative approach. So if we expected even 60% of that average, what would our number be? And so if I go down to the bottom is where you'll see the district totals. Of course, each building is broken out above that. But if we look at our district totals for this school year, using that 1558. And so if we take the average there across the years, and then take 60% of that, 1,575 would be what we'd be looking at with this model of taking that average growth year over year for the last 5 years. And again, going on a conservative edge with 60%. The third option, which again is probably, I guess, the furthest removed from us and what we see, this is a snapshot of one of the models that we get from Michigan Alliance. So this is that Model 5, if you recall, there's the 4 different models that they run through, and the Model 5 averages those 4. So if you look at Model 5 for what they were projecting for the 26-27 school year, that projection is quite a bit higher than what we saw in the last 2 slides. Keeping in mind, though, their number would include GSRP and Head Start students. I have the GSRP number. As of right now, we have 86 GSRP students, so right off the top, you would take 86 out of that 1,609. Again, because they do count that. I do not have the Head Start number in front of me, but it's not going to be nearly as high as 86. But reducing that does get it a lot closer to what we were looking at with those previous 2 numbers. So those are our choices, or I guess our options, to kind of think about how we want to use a starting number for enrollment as we go into this budget planning. So this would be a good time for questions or comments on that piece of it.
I say we stick to the first one.
Yeah, we always do.
I think that's what we've pretty much done over the last, I don't know, 4 or 5 years.
It feels the most realistic, I would say.
Yeah.
It feels tangible to me.
I like to be conservative too about it, and I don't want to have to worry about us not moving that number. It's nicer when we know that we've gone over. So, for me personally, I would look at option 1.
Yeah, I think I'm more conservative about it as well.
Okay, so we'll
Proceed
or
so
go
we'll proceed
forward?
with that one. I'm going to move forward then. One more piece that I do want to share before we look at our, again, kind of how this will impact us and what that will look like. And you do have this in front of you, so it can be a little bit larger. So the governor's recommendation is to increase the allowance by $250, which brings it to a total of $10,300 for next school year. Again, if you kind of move down and you see those red, or those places where the reduction is, it does eliminate the separate funding for Section 31A and Section 41, which is our bilingual. So again, those are going to get moved into other places. We still anticipate there will be funding for those, but they're not going to be those standalone categoricals. And so Tammy will probably talk a little bit more about that as well. But just so you see, there is the anticipated increase in the actual overall allowance for next year.
So are we touching the 2 red categories right now? Do we know where they're going or what they're doing, or have we heard?
It's in the governor's proposal.
Okay,
Some people
okay.
say it's likely to happen, but we
Okay, so it's
They've
just.
done things in the past that are not completely probably.
And what do they call it, section 22, is that what we've heard a little bit
Sorry,
about?
yeah, section 22B, a weighted pupil membership payment.
So that's supposed to kind of, to sort of compensate for that loss there, but again, it's a little difficult to say and see right now. Overall, though, I mean, even with that change, you do see the total change there in the dark golden end of 462 out of 194.
Well, yeah, but that's only if you really get $250.
But we don't. We
In
don't.
reality,
Right.
that's the big
If
issue.
everything else was,
Because that was-
if everything else was the same.
Right.
Yeah, it's not going to be that way.
But is that, yeah, that 41, the bilingual, you're saying eliminate it, we do something different. Is it going to be like what they're going to do, what they did with the 31AA where there's things, hoops, if you don't go through the hoops, you're not getting it?
I mean, it's hard to say right now, I guess that's certainly not something I've heard specifically. But again, we've experienced what we've experienced, right? And I have some other pieces I'll share later today, though, I think even, and make it feel more like that, you know, are we going in that direction? Is it, you know, is that what we're going to feel? Or does that just go away and they just say, okay, well, we moved a little extra money into the foundational allowance, so that's all you need, and that just goes away. I mean, that could be another option, and if that's the case, then we're not going to see that increase.
And the bilingual education, that's not, that isn't what the ISD, that's separate, what we get from the ISD, or what is bilingual? We have bilingual
So
students,
there's-
how we educate them?
Yeah, so we recently, so we've had to have posted, because we do have about 60 bilingual students in the district, and so there's a calculation that kind of tells you with X amount of population of students, you need this many FTE of bilingual certified teachers. And so that money is there really with the intention of being able to compensate for part of those that teaching salary is the ideal way that it is meant to be spent. So we were lucky enough to find a great addition to the staff. She started just a couple of months ago. So we do have that bilingual teacher now, so moving forward for the rest of the school year at least, that section 41A money is being utilized to cover part of her salary. In the years past, before we were able to hire a teacher, we had to have a plan in place to submit each year of kind of what we're doing. In the meantime, before we had a teacher, we had some different software that we used. We did some of our summer school for bilingual students. We paid out of that. So we've always been utilizing it the best we could for those students, but now we are using it the way it was meant to be, which is to pay for a teacher. So now that we have a teacher, now they want to take it away.
Okay, so then the idea would be, if it does go away, then the bilingual teacher that we hired will be a conversation.
Or is that still a requirement, right? So is it a requirement without the funding backing it?
Got it.
I'm going to pull up a different, little bit larger spreadsheet that's a little easier not to see on a slide, so I'm going to switch to that real quick and then turn it over briefly to Tammy.
I will be talking about the big spreadsheet that's in your, I think it's in the blue packet, yes, or the map. That's, I think, what Billy's working to put up. Maybe it'll see a little better on paper. Okay. So we start with the top line, which is student enrollment projections. So for fiscal year 2026, our blended count is 1,546.57. And anticipating you might go the conservative route for enrollment, I put a projection for the fiscal year 27 at that 1,518.51, which reduces our blended count by about 28 students. The next section talks about revenue based on that student foundation and how much, what the impact is based on losing enrollment. So that would take $282,000 out of our budget, not good news. We kept the per pupil foundation the same because we just, you know, the governor proposal, but we don't know what the House and Senate are thinking, and we really don't know what direction they're going to go. So we left it, like you said, that 250 the governor's promising is in the column in the red highlights as 10,300 for the governor's proposal, and we don't know anything about House and Senate. So that gives you that section, then below that, it gives us a total, what our current amended budget looks like. So we have projected revenue at $23,495,000 and projected expenditures at $23,770,000. So we're planning to use $275,210 as of our first amendment. That number will change because we will do a year-end amendment, so that will change. Not for the better, I'm afraid, because of a few factors. One being that possibly 31AA lost funding. We've got that in the budget. And then we had not allocated the expenditures for the 27L educator expense. So that expenditure needs to come out as well. So that number is going to grow. And keep in mind, we still have $500,000 or just under $500,000 that we're putting as set aside for the turf computer replacement possibly that. So that's still in the budget. And so when you factor that in, we might be close to breaking. I show a section on lines 21 and 22, starting fund balance. Right now we're at $3,581,000. Projecting our current budget at a loss of $275,000, we would end the year at $3,305,000. So that's the current status of this budget. And so down below, we have some things that are going to affect the fiscal year 27 budget that we know on the expenditure side because we settled contracts. The Early Learning Center contract is the only one that's up at the end of this year, so that is being negotiated. They can start negotiations soon.
We are literally in days right now.
So I have a zero in that line for that early childhood contract. We don't know where we're going with that. The educational paraprofessional contract, you see an increase. Food service does not affect the general fund, but somehow I ended up with a number in there. Fix that for the next time. The RAA, Richmond Administrators Association, there's an increase there. This includes pay, FICA, and retirement. So it's not just the payroll, it's also FICA and retirement on that payroll. And then the secretaries and the RAA are in there. The next section, so those are all increases, that's why they're in black. The next section is non-union groups. Right now, because of 31AA possibly going away, we would probably, maybe not eliminate, but reduce the security monitors in the buildings. Central office employees have contracts in place that were approved in December, custodians. Breakfast lunch aides aren't on that group, so their decrease of $278 is basically a change in retirement rates. Technology employees are on there and transportation employees. That's basically all the non-union groups in the district and the increases that have already been approved. Miscellaneous budget items, we will need to either take out the revenue next year or have to add the revenue expense for this year. So we've got the revenue this year, but we don't have the expenditure. So that's the $225,000. And then the adjustment for replacing retiring teachers. We have a couple of teachers who let us know they're leaving. We know that they're where they are on the scale. We wouldn't hire teachers at the same point, so we would have some savings. And that's what that is, projected savings for those replacing those two teachers. Sure. Then grant changes, continuing down. Because we're getting the educator on loan, which is a reimbursement, we will still have the cost, but we'll also have a revenue. So that will reduce our, actually improve our budget by reducing one instructional coach that we're paying for. We'll still pay part of it, won't be reimbursed, but most of it will be. So that's what that $138,000 savings is. And then anticipating the loss of 31AA next year, anticipating probably losing one social worker that was funded by 31AA. And that's $79,000. And then some reduction in on-site training costs, about $45,000. So a projected change for 26-27 in just those expenditures is about $841,000. When you factor that in with the lost revenue from the decrease in student enrollment, we would have an impact of about $1.1 million the wrong way to our budget. The good news is, hopefully we'll do better than that enrollment-wise. We'll still spend our money doing good things for kids. And if we do get 57 more students from this projected low of 1,518 to the higher projection of 1,575, that would impact us about $576,000 to the positive for our budget. So hopefully column AA projected fiscal year 2027 is our very worst case scenario that we will never see. And when we get the House and Senate, we will fill in those columns and and maybe add things that come up or clarify some things as the picture gets clearer. But it is early, it's March. I'm hoping they can get us a budget in early June, because if they wait until the end of June, it really doesn't help us a lot, because we have to bring it to you well before the end of June. So, we'll see what goes. Any questions on all of that?
I don't know that necessarily a question, I guess. This isn't like, this is just the first beginning, right? I don't like the idea of getting rid of a social worker, that's what this is saying, right?
So
It's
this,
just, go ahead, I'm sorry.
so, we were really looking at, as Tammy and I went through, and, okay, and we know places where those reductions are, 31 AA, those pieces. So I really took a look at, okay, what are we paying for currently out of that money that could be a realistic, reduction. So one thing with the social work piece is we do have 4. Removing one, you have 1 in each building still, so I tried to think of places where we maybe wouldn't feel the impact as much. There are, again, so we looked at up in the section above when Tammy talked about the security hall monitors. That the other part of the reason for that being 24,000 in our favor is there really hasn't been much of a point this year when all of the anticipated roles for security monitors were filled, whether it was somebody just because the bus drivers had that option to take that during the day position. Not all of them opt to do that. So we have kind of already looked at how it does look with fewer than the maximum in those positions, and still the ability to make sure somebody is monitoring throughout the day with fewer people, I guess, if you will. So that's another piece that is in 31AA. We have paid for part of the instructional coaches, not out of 31AA, but 31A, which we also know we're seeing reductions in, we don't have the carryover that we had before, and again, that benefit of having the educator on loan, so it sort of replaced itself naturally, if you will, in that regard. And then the on-site training, as we move forward with the new English and math curriculum that we've implemented, we're moving, we had those initial quite large expenses for training on those first couple of years. So those will be things that will start to fall away. And then again, some of those benefits, some of those perks, and Tammy kind of talked about how do we put this in here the right way. Maybe it's not lunch every time we have a PD, or maybe it's, some of those things that you could kind of trim the fat a little bit, but still get the heart of what you need. So absolutely though, Sandy, to answer your question, yes, this is very much a first look at, hey, these are where these people and or things are paid out of, what's an idea that we could come with, and if it's not something the board's comfortable, then we'll look at other options.
So you say we have 4 social workers now, right? So this would give us 1 per building. Do you know around about how many students are in each building?
They're on the social workers
No,
case
just how many students are in each building?
Oh, sure. I mean, in the middle school, we have, we're at 600. Or we could go back to our enrollment page, right? So
Yeah.
Between that 500 and 600 number.
Okay, and then the elementary school and the high school, I'm assuming there's less.
A little bit, but they're all
About that range.
Yeah. And then the middle school and high school have their counselor as well. So that was another piece, if I believe, as before me, but I think that there was the thought to have a counselor and a social worker in each building. But that could be, it's challenging to find an elementary counselor, it can be more challenging. So we don't have that, but we do have that additional social worker, so that kind of fills that void a little bit.
Right.
But a school counselor and
It's
social worker are
still
two completely different animals.
They are, but it does give
No.
that support.
No, it doesn't. It's not even the same. It's not the same. Maybe I missed what you said. I'm sorry, you don't see anything, sorry.
Yeah, I just want to express my concern of getting rid of a social worker, I guess. I mean, I don't know what else I understand that we have to make some tough decisions, I do get that. I'm just not sure if that's one that would make, I guess I would have to, once we get into it more, I guess, see what choices. Yeah, what the choices would be.
So the building security monitors, I think I missed as you were talking. So you're talking here about eliminating them, that's going to save $24,000.
No, so that 24 occurred this year beyond what we had budgeted for. So if they maxed out and filled position and full-time for the whole year that we had budgeted for, then that 24 would be break even. We wouldn't see that difference, but they've not filled, we haven't had that filled.
Because we budgeted for 2 in each building,
Right.
correct?
Right.
And how many have we had?
Up to 4, the elementary has never had any
Okay.
monitor this year.
So, so the 24, so we went 24,000 over, is what you're saying?
No.
So you,
We didn't, we still have that available that we won't.
People didn't want it.
Like
They were stuff that we didn't
Right.
want. It was in the budget.
So we budgeted for it, but didn't use it.
Correct.
Right, we budgeted a certain number of people.
so
we
the
had-
red means that's gonna go away because we're not going to ask for 6 next year? Am I, what am I not following?
If we budgeted for the same, then we would have a $24,000. If we budgeted for what we actually spent this year, then it would be that much less than last year, or than this current year.
Okay.
So we would be cutting,
So knowing that we didn't have them at elementary school, we could remove that piece. That has not been something that they indicated. So again, keeping in mind, you don't have students going through an elementary school without staff really ever, right? I mean, they're always with their teacher, or the restroom is in their classroom, or they're doing a team break. So there wasn't really, they've not expressed a concern with not having them there, whereas at the middle school and high school,
Okay,
we
so,
definitely need that.
so are you saying you want to continue with 4 for next year?
The
Is that what you're saying?
equivalent of having someone, yes, so even though there's 4, there's often morning person, afternoon person at each building. So it's essentially 4 people, but at each time there's 1 person on duty, if you will.
I'm sorry, I must really be thick tonight, but I just, because we created those positions so that our bus drivers have the ability to be full-time, have benefits, and to try to keep them so they weren't going down the road. So again, I guess, I'm sorry if I'm being thick, but, so we still, this right here is still budgeting to have 4, doing it like we're doing.
Yeah.
But the 24,000 would go away, would be 24,000 to the good if we kept just the 4. So this
Yes.
negative 24 doesn't mean.
Or it's to the good.
It's a positive.
Yeah.
Okay.
But keeping in
not
mind that the
personal.
dollars that we're using to pay for them right now are going away. So while
I-
it's less.
Yes, I get that.
expense,
Yes.
It's coming from somewhere different.
Okay. And then the adjustment for replacement of retiring teachers. We said we have 2 that we know are going. So that's a savings, but are you looking at it because you're going to, this is how much they're costing us, where would we hire somebody in? Are we looking at, do we need to even replace 2 retiring teachers? How does that work? My note here was numbers, move grades around. Meaning, okay, this year kindergarten was so many classes, next year you might not need that in first grade. So where is all that at?
So if that's doable, absolutely, that would be a great way to save money. So we've just started, we've had 1 initial conversation. The buildings are still working through that process of getting all of the student requests and student class schedules in right now.
Okay.
So absolutely, that is something we would look at anytime, but certainly this time.
Okay, so we are looking that the 2 retirements we have, we will need to replace.
So assuming, right, if we assume everything's flat and stayed the same and we replace them, we used the step 5 as just a guesstimate placeholder for that.
Okay.
So them leaving at a top pay scale, if we were to bring someone at step 5, that would be the savings.
Okay. And then down here, the grant changes, where's the school liaison officer? Why isn't that in here?
It could be, anything
It should
could
be.
be, yeah.
Because
anything
if we're
that's
going to talk about a
20,000.
social worker,
Yep.
that should be a line item as well.
Yep. There's a number of safety materials, I went with the highest pay out of that one, which is the social worker, but yeah.
Yeah, I'd rather see it all, because whatever's covered under this grant, because that's what we talked about back in the fall, when we said we knew we were going to, I don't know what's the word, be able to deal with for
Right.
this school year. going. So that liaison officer's got to be in there if we're actually going to have a legitimate conversation about grant stuff.
Yeah, and that's about $20,000 expense.
And the instructional coach, do you feel that's a no-brainer, right? If we've got,
So we still have 2 coaches in this
Correct.
model, yeah.
we wouldn't need 3
Right.
because we've got the one we got for free.
Yeah, okay.
Let's see, I did say something to you, Billy, and you said as you're going along, but like my athletic questions from last time, my question was about tournaments, you know, when we had talked about, when we did everything, when we got we're on the yearly scale of uniforms and stuff, and we did that. My tournament question is, what's a legitimate tournament that each sport needs to attend? And some of our sports bring money into the school when they have a tournament, how does it weigh out? So just so everyone knows, my question to her after the board meeting was that, looking for that kind of conversation as we go along too.
Yeah. Lots of pieces.
I would say keep in mind that this is first round.
Yeah, oh,
So
yeah.
we're
Right,
gonna-
I just-
Okay, because
that's why I asked
these
my question.
conversations we're going to be having down the road.
Yes, absolutely.
The things, Billy, I would like to see, if we do have to make some discussions about cuts, would just be, what does that look like with the social worker? I'm obviously not for cutting any position, but I would like to see kind of the 4 we have, what their roles are, what they fill, and then how we would restructure to make it work with 3. Because we might be able to make it work with 3, I think we just need to be able to see what do those, because I do agree, counselor is very different than a social worker. The functions typically in a school setting are very different. And if we're adding a counselor, I don't know that we're saving anything then, so I guess I was confused. We'd be adding a counselor?
No, that was just, I think, how we ended up with a 4th social worker rather than 3.
Okay, got it. So if we could see what those 4 are doing and how it would look restructured, I might be okay with cutting a social worker. And then also, I don't know if we presented on this or not since I've been back on, but I'm curious what exactly the liaison does all day, like what their function is. I just don't even know what they really do. So in order to know if I want to cut it or not, I need to know kind of what they do. Yeah, like all day. I think that's it.
And I think we got extra social worker because we couldn't get a counselor. I don't remember that. I thought it was, we needed, and I'm looking at who was on committee at that time. Wasn't it social work because we had the need for a social worker, right? Not that we couldn't get an elementary counselor. Am
I wasn't here.
Yeah.
I don't know, I don't remember how, I don't remember.
That's just what I thought.
When I was on the board last, we did have an elementary counselor. I remember something medical came up and she went off and she left. I don't know, something happened and she was gone. And then we never replaced her. It was a counselor. We had a counselor, something happened in her family. I don't know what it was. I really don't remember. She ended up leaving. I'm sure Mr. Walmsley remembers actually. She ended up leaving and we never replaced her. That is as far as my memory is.
Okay. But I would love to see what the liaison officer does himself.
Yeah, just to know, I mean, I am pro having a liaison officer, I will say that, but I would like to actually put some roles and responsibilities to it, because then I think it would make more sense.
With respect to safety.
Correct, yeah, well, I think their presence alone just kind of lends itself to safety, hopefully. So again, I am pro liaison officer, I'll go on the record saying that, but I still think to be responsible, we need to see it.
They're only here for 4 hours a day, right? Yeah, so it's not a full day.
Okay, any other questions for Kayla?
This will be a conversation we're going to have through the end of the year, so we get our budget assumptions all in place, and we know more from the House and Senate and what we hear happening in Wednesday. So stay tuned. Keep coming.
Have you heard of any
I just
new
gonna say,
grants coming out? Any new exciting things that could offset something? And I just wishing.
Wishful.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, other than this 22B, which is supposed to be more than our 3194 we're like buying.
That's that one-time one.
Well, no, that's restructuring the 31A and 41A into a new number, which is supposed to be increased from the other two. It's early.
The House and Senate, do we know if they're even working on this?
Like a month ago, they're like, well, they hope to get their budgets out before they go on break, but they're going on break pretty soon, and we get still.
Okay.
I think one's out for 2 weeks, one's out for 3 weeks, and it'll be end of April.
So then, Billy, do you want us, as we think of things, you want us to email you or questions or whatever is going on? Thank you for bringing it this way.
I'll send it in.
Okay, next item on our agenda is our student rep. So Elizabeth, you're on.
All right, there's a lot today, so get ready. Starting with the high school, congratulations to our robotics team who competed in Marysville a couple of weeks ago. Our team competed well and was selected to be part of an alliance, which earned a second place finish. We were also awarded the Rising Star Award. They put that the key details of the Rising All-Star Award is to recognize new teams or teams with new beginnings that are growing rapidly in capability. Focus, it recognizes resilience, team culture, and impact rather than just on-field performance, according to Instagram posts. We conducted a school-wide activity on St. Patrick's Day to promote student collaboration among students. A big thank you to Ms. Parman and our teacher cadet students and Ms. Spencer for their efforts in making it a fun day for students. Students and staff are looking forward to our upcoming spring break. It is a much-deserved break, and we hope everyone finds time to relax and enjoy their time off. Safe travels to everyone who's traveling. At the middle school, they had their final Cyber Safe Schools presentation on Monday, March 16th. Our parent meeting with the Cyber Safe Schools team will be the same night as our parent empowerment night, which is April 7th. Cyber Safe Schools will be at 6:30 in the middle school cafeteria. We had a field trip last week along with our 5th graders attending Starbase. Our 7th grade students attended Cranbrook. Our 8th grade honors design students went to the Da Vinci exhibit at the Henry Ford Museum. And our choir students went to the Detroit Opera House to see The Lion King. So a lot of field trips going on. As always, our students represented Richmond with pride and had all the amazing experiences. On March 11th, our 6th grade choir, and on March 12th, and our 7th and 8th grade choir participated in MSBMA District Chorale Festival. Both choirs earned a first division rating and both received a 30 out of 30 perfect score in sight reading. We are so proud of Miss Stacy Floor and all of our choir students for their exceptional showing. Both choirs have been invited to perform at the State Chorale Festival in April. On Friday, March 20th, RMS students experienced the annual Pi Day and St. Patrick's Day Assembly. Our students and staff had a great time recognizing our winter athletes, playing fun games, and just building community in a very positive manner. Thank you to Ms. Riley and the NJHS students for running an exceptional assembly. For the Lee School, the elementary held their talent show on Thursday evening. The event showcased over 15 acts from karate, dancing, singing, tumbling. Ms. Van Goody had a blast emceeing the event and celebrating so much more than academics. Huge shout out to Ms. Hayes and Ms. Gibson for chairing the event. Kindergarten and preschool open enrollment was held on Friday after school. The enrollment team, along with elementary secretaries, were able to enroll over 65 students. Great job, and we welcome our future Blue Devils. For athletics, varsity baseball opened the season with a win over Lance Cruz. The win was Coach Evans' 500th of his career. They traveled to Marysville on Wednesday and host Lake Shore on Thursday. Girls soccer played a talented Port Huron Northern team on Wednesday, losing 4-0. They are in action tonight against Mooney and come in home against Austin Catholic on Wednesday. This spring has not been kind for our sports schedule so far, but parents, players, and fans are encouraged to check the athletic website for up-to-date schedules and cancellation notifications. Middle school track will begin Wednesday, April 8th after school on the track. And that's it.
Anyone have any questions for Elizabeth? Thank you. Okay, next item on our agenda is our superintendent search update. Michigan Leadership Institute is continuing to accept applications for the superintendent position. The final date for accepting applications will be Wednesday, April 1st at 4 p.m. So that's next week. And then from there, we will be looking at all of the candidates to decide who we will be interviewing. That's it for that. Margaret, you have a bond update?
No. Billy?
Billy's going to do it? Okay, thank you.
So a couple of pieces will be a little repeat, but I think worth revisiting. So again, we were talking about a repeat of our original proposal. So we are seeing this again because the reality is we still need that space. Our students are still, especially at the middle school, maxed out completely and very near so at both the elementary and the high school as well. So because our reality hasn't changed, that's why our proposal has not changed. So in looking at, again, this is probably the most common question I would say that we get as that bond committee, those of us that are out talking to different folks in the community is, how does this work? How is it possible that it's a no increase, but yet we're going to be able to perpetuate over $50 million? And so keeping in mind, if we look at this graph that we've seen since before November, that currently the millage is around that 7, but it has been steadily decreasing, as you can see, from 22. And in July of this year, it would be decreased again here. What we are asking is, rather than having that decrease by 1.7 mils this July, to keep the mills the same, or to keep that millage the same. And so we will see for July, instead of coming down, we would see a flat line and just stay consistent. So again, folks will have seen that decrease over the last few years, which we'll see an example of on the next slide, exactly what that's looked like the last few years for them. But again, we're asking to kind of pause it there and keep paying the same rather than that decrease rate. So that is how we're able to say it is not an increase, it is just a freeze at the current rate, essentially. So this is an example of a local district person's tax statement. And so looking specifically at the school millage, which is that bottom piece of this Casco Township tax bill. So you can see in 2023, it was at 6.95, and then down to 6.7, down to 6.5. So that decrease has been happening. It would have been higher. It was over 7 before this. And so, like I said, we're just asking to kind of take that pause here, take that freeze and keep with that current millage rate, so that way we would be able to see that increase in the revenue that we could see from this bond. So last time we kind of talked about enrollment and how those numbers are looking to increase. Again, we saw that a bit in some of those projections earlier today. And so let's take a look at a couple of the buildings. So this is what the elementary school is kind of looking like right at the moment. And these are 3 classrooms, those 3 yellow highlighted buildings, or excuse me, rooms, are rooms that one could say are not in use right now, but the reality is they're certainly not sitting there empty. This particular room, the one that's at the top end of the screen, is actually a room that we use as an office for our instructional coaches, so that they do have a home base to work out of. And then we do use one as kind of a book library place where all of the teachers' curriculum and those items are stored. Also leveled books for the students. So again, we have a large amount of these, and so those are able to be stored in one of those spaces so that the teachers have easy access to them throughout the school year. And then again, the others we use, again, I know we've had board members visit, and we have the palming room and also a resource room as well that are it's considered a not-use space, but we are absolutely using it currently. But if we had to put a classroom in any of those 3, we could, but that would not be ideal because then we'd have those other items or other rooms that we would have no space for. At the middle school, you'll see there aren't any of those yellow spaces because there are no free rooms available at the middle school at all. Keeping in mind that the gym also, so we have our gymnasium over here, always split in half. So at any given point in the day, you'll have multiple classes going on in there. Here, which would normally just be a community space at the stage, that is actually, the wall is closed and it is used as the music classroom for our students to have their music program. Several of the classrooms are used for double teachers, so one teacher's in there most of the day, and then on that prep period, another teacher will come in and use it, especially in some of like our art room, things like that are used for multiple staff members. If we look at, well, that kind of explains what I just explained. The current of the high school is, again, kind of similar to what we saw at the elementary, 3 spaces that we could call available. But again, they really aren't. I will say that this, kind of the one to my left, that room is, it was an office space, but they're actually now using that for the podcast room for the broadcasting class. They expanded some of the content that they're doing with that class, and so they've opened that up in that room. So I don't even know that we can say it's available now. That's what's in there now. Another one is used for whether it's student meetings, small group meetings, IEP meetings, teacher, PD type meetings. So there's one kind of flex room that's used for that. And then another one is, again, has a number of our CTE program equipment in there that we're able to kind of move in and kind of make use of a little bit larger space to move some things around where needed in those CTE classrooms. So really nowhere do we see space that's truly not being used for something. When we look ahead, you know, a lot has gone on, a lot has been done to prepare for the bond, because keeping in mind, this wasn't something that we only did just between November and now. This started well before that, and because we didn't change the scope of what we were asking for, much of the work that was done prior to November really sustained, because again, we're asking and looking for the same project. So there's been meetings with Hawk and French associates to identify those areas that were not previously addressed in bonds in 2013 and 19. Restrooms is a huge one. We see that across all 3 buildings. Some roofing that needs to be done. And then again, the biggest piece of this is just that additional space. There have been meetings with every stakeholder that you can imagine. So the building staff, department, administrative teams, you know, from teachers, parents to students, everyone had an opportunity to really kind of share what they were in need of from this bond. Obviously, to get into sharing with the board what that might look like, we cost out projects with Hawk and French associates, and again, by using that feedback that was gathered. So through all of that input and putting all those pieces together, this is what it could look like moving into the future, starting with the high school. Several of these areas would be the restrooms that we talked about, so any of those areas that, you know, again, all of the restrooms are really just out of date. I mean, we often have plumbing issues, we're having closed bathrooms, whether it's the lighting, whether it's the fans, whether it's the plumbing. It seems like it's always something with one of the restrooms that is causing it to be closed. They really, really need to be updated. This purple area in the middle would allow for an increase in the size of the cafeteria, as well as some additional office and multi-use space that we can use, again, staff like social workers, that kind of thing. And then hugely would be this new addition of several classrooms. Again, this is not necessarily specific to scale, but it could house up to 10, 12 classrooms if designed out this way. So that would be off of that science wing. And another important piece here, also in blue, is the current high school clinic does not have a restroom within it. It's kind of it has a door for privacy, but I was just talking to Ms. Zabo the other day. There's a concern. Unlike the other buildings where it's kind of more like at a doctor's office, almost like an open but curtain, you can create privacy. Whereas the high school, a student could go in there, lock the door, there's no window. So you could have a student with a medical emergency that could lock themselves in. So we were talking about just how really risky that current setup is of that clinic. And again, and not having the restroom piece too, which we know often can be necessary if you're having a medical situation. So again, I think that's a really important addition that we would be able to accomplish. Get all of our areas. Those are the bathrooms in yellow. And then outside of the high school, we have the additional parking. So this is the parking lot behind the auditorium that you see that's kind of in gray there. And then we would be able to add large additional sections all the way up to the roadway essentially. At the middle school, a little reworking of what's kind of currently the 4th and 5th grade wing to make sure that we could really kind of make that an authentic wing, if you will. Or, again, if we want to move them down here to this new edition where it's completely all new in that blue section at the bottom of the screen, then those rooms might need to be reworked for other purposes as well. Both of the current wings have just kind of a larger room off the side. Those can be multi-purpose. So again, when we're talking about that choir class that's currently on the stage, these would be larger type rooms that you could use for a classroom like a music class. That type of, again, different kind of environment potentially. And then again, a large wing with key feature there would be that additional multi-purpose space, which could be utilized as a second gymnasium. It could be used as another cafeteria space or space for eating. At this point, we weren't necessarily budgeting out a whole new kitchen down there, but still that space could afford us that opportunity. And then kind of a neat feature, I guess, if you will, this little red square at the bottom is actually an exterior facing restroom potentially. When we look at where athletic fields are, that would give that opportunity to have a nice, actual, true functioning outside accessible restroom rather than porta potties all over the place. So that might be helpful. And then also the bathroom renovations that you see popping up in yellow across the middle school as well. For the elementary, our biggest need there is really the kitchen. So for such a large volume of students that come through with breakfast and lunch every day, you can see that the scope is really doubling, if not a little more than doubling, the current size of the kitchen there. So that's the huge need there at the elementary school, as well as a few more classrooms that we would be able to fit in off of this wing here. And updating, there aren't as many bathrooms and their renovations probably would not be as strenuous. Again, keeping in mind many elementary classrooms have the bathroom within, which would not require the same level of renovation that those public or community bathrooms need. And again, this has been a fan favorite as I've talked to different groups, is additional parking at Lee as well, across from the large main parking lot, adding additional parking there. I don't know how all the kindergarten parents knew, maybe they have older siblings, but we were talking at the kindergarten roundup and I can't say how many parents said, you had me at parking lot, oh, parking lot, okay, we're good, parking lot. So we know that's what people are thinking will be a good help if we're able to do that.
I'm really wondering, just because you said that and said the little kids, how that would look to get across that road.
I
know there's a stop sign there, yep. But I mean, I've seen it day in and day out. Like people just blow that all the time, and I honk my horn at them.
I'm not sure that it would be used as much. I mean, it could be. You know, I don't think we certainly wouldn't use it as a drop-off location or anything like that, right? That would still stay over in the park closer to the building. You know, and if we had to add, you know, we have the crossing guards down by the roundabout. So if this was something where we found the families really were parking there to come in and out beginning and end of day, then we might have to add like that crossing guard at the stop sign area there, or maybe adjust where that crosswalk is so it's a more convenient spot for families that's a little bit safer. But I think that we'd have to do something like that.
I know that, I mean, it's looking for it. It's definitely something to talk about because I know there's days where I get stopped before that stop sign and have to wait because it's a one-way now, waiting past the stop sign all the way to get in, and then we ended up getting in at like 48, and we are in the parking lot by 37.
Yeah.
So I could see parents, because they're already starting to go into the fields to park in that little side lot by the softball field, the baseball field.
Yeah.
And
so that
I could see them jumping right into that lot. It would just be so much
right,
easier.
you jump in and jump out of the car, but then you have the traffic.
Yeah.
So no, that is a really good idea.
We play Frogger right now with that little side lot to get across.
Could that be used for staff parking?
That's a good potential. Yeah, that could be an idea too.
That's a good idea.
To move that, right? Yeah, that is a good suggestion. Absolutely. Definitely something we would be a little closely at, changing the pattern.
Billy, can I ask just a couple questions about that, just because I think people might want to know. We indicate that there's going to be no increase, right? But do we know, like, when would that depend? Like, until when?
It's a 20-year.
Okay, 20 years, okay.
But the increase wouldn't last 20 years.
No,
It wouldn't
right.
be flat, though.
Right.
That was one of the misconceptions that I tried to address on Facebook over the last week. It was like, reading that graph, I was just
Right.
surprised at how many were misinformed of how the graph is to be read. It
Yes.
doesn't stay steady like that for the next 20 years.
No.
It
Right.
stays like that until like 32, 33, and then starts to decrease again.
Right.
It's not flat
It's
for 20
being paid
years.
off. So just like if you're paying off the car, right, your car and the interest, right? I mean, your outstanding loan isn't the same year after year. So that, you would see where that would start again.
That's the red line, right?
Yeah, that's the black.
Okay, and then, I don't know, I just, you know, you mentioned the sensory or calming room at the elementary school. Everyone knows I'm a big fan, but, I just, you know, I hate when we say that room is available.
I know.
And I know that we have to say that, but I just want to know that, I want to let everybody know that I did visit that room. When I visited that room, which maybe it's not the same now, but they pretty much did use it every day for students. I mean, it's used daily for students, so. Okay.
I agree with you, Sam.
I know, I don't want to have to say it's available. Because like I said, none of those spaces are available. That's
Right,
the reality
right.
is. None
That
of
ends
them
up
are.
being, yes, and I'm not saying, not to dismiss
Right.
every other space.
Sure.
That one is being utilized by students daily.
Anyone else have any questions on our bond bill?
And the last slide there, I think, had it up there a couple times, but just, we will go more in depth with the details of the bond and also a nice virtual tour of what the bond projects could look like. So I'll get that tomorrow. Lots of highlighting, sorry.
One too far.
On Wednesday, we have the State of the District event, and so again, we will have a virtual tour that includes not only kind of video footage of where different pieces and additions could potentially be, but also testimonials from different staff and students that are impacted by kind of that squeezing of space or past experiences that they've had in the district, and would not like to see us get back to that point and want to keep seeing us move forward. So I'm looking forward to being able to share that. And that's our bond update for today.
We will share that on our district page also, right?
Yep, so after Wednesday, it will be shared widely. Yeah, we have a number of folks that are interested in posting it for us, and so we will get that shared out.
Okay, next, thank you very much. Next item on our agenda is our Blue Devil Raves. Let's start off with Candace.
Short and sweet, but yes, I was able to attend the Blue Devil soft opening for the first day. It was 2 Thursdays ago. They had the Italian lunch, and it was amazing. So looking forward to that being open more often. Good job.
Thank you. Margaret?
I just have one I read today in Lindsay McCoy's classroom, and she's got a really cool classroom. It's really fun, and I told the kids when I was in 3rd grade that the classrooms didn't look like this. And so just really, really cool, welcoming, fun classroom. So just a shout out to her. Thanks for having me read, but it's a cool space. Cool.
Danielle?
I have 2 things. I read in Miss Sizzleman's room, and you were right. It was awesome in there. It was so fun. And she had the house stuff on the floor projecting when I walked in because somebody had heard a point coincidentally, and I wore my Bindi shirt, so they were all chanting their Bindi chants, and she had some really awesome ways to catch their attention in classroom management. So that was really cool to see. And then I was in Miss Goddard's room and Miss Van Sudwright's reading. So that was a lot of fun. Also, as we were sitting here talking about the bond and things, I just wanted to thank those staff members that were kind of chiming in on the community pages and, you know,
they may not have that opportunity to attend the bond meetings or contribute, attending a meeting and speaking at an open comment, but being there and, talking about their current classroom situations and trying to explain to the community and doing their part in doing that was really cool to see as I was scrolling through the Richmond pages. So that was fun.
Sandy?
Yeah, just two real quick. I was able to attend the Lee School Talent Show, and it was fabulous. So I just wanted to say, thank you to, I know it was Ms. Hayes and Ms. Gibson, and then I'm not sure if the PTO, is it usually PTO involved or not? I'm not sure if they were or not this year. Okay, so the Ms. Hayes and Ms. Gibson, thank you so much. I appreciate it. Ms. Manguni as well. It was fantastic. It was a really, really cool night. The kids were excited. They were all very well behaved and everything, because they kind of sat and watched each other too, so I thought they did a great job. And then also I was able to attend the NHS induction for the high school. Got to see Kelsey be inducted, and again, thanks to Ms. Shagna, she did a fabulous job with that. So kudos to all those kids that were inducted, and to Ms. Shagna, thank you.
Thank you. Sarah?
Just to echo what Sandy said a little bit, I was also at the NHS induction, and very impressed with the amount of kids that are in NHS, because they had all the grades there that were in the seniors and juniors and the upcoming, sophomores going into it. So many kids, that is impressive to see. And they all looked like they were, genuinely happy to be there and excited. And I know my daughter was excited about it. So yeah, it was a good presentation. Ms. Shank did great. The kids did great. It was cool.
Thank you. I don't have anything because I'm in town. Next meeting. Okay, next item on the agenda is our interim superintendent and legislative update. Lily?
Also kind of a mix between legislative and district. I had the opportunity to participate in two civic activities with our students, from youngest to some of our oldest. Last Monday, Candace and I attended the Northern Macomb Regional Chamber of Commerce breakfast, legislative breakfast. They had that at Little Camille's on the Green this year. So quite a few of our local legislators were there, and I think each one of them that spoke really talked about the growth and development that we're seeing in the area of, not just Richmond, but all of Northern Macomb County, and especially as they're looking at those 5, 10, 15-year projections. And I appreciate that Candace really, took that opportunity to ask them if they saw this growth as a reason to support the bond efforts that we, were engaging in the district, and there was definitely a lot of positive response, and they saw that as a close alignment with the needs of this area. So that was nice to see and nice to hear that level of support. And we had County Executive Mark Hackle was there at the breakfast, and then he was also here in the district last Thursday. He was reading to the Great Start, Head Start readiness program classroom. So it was very cute. He came with a backpack full of characters and little costumes that he had some of the kids in as they were reading along with them. So he made me think I'm gonna have to up my game the next time I go into the classroom read. I was apparently not very well prepared. so it was really cute, really fun morning. Also at Lee this week we had a couple of good events. Again, the talent show, so Sandy already spoke to that. And then they also have their Title I night, which again, it combines with our bilingual. So that's an event that we do use some of those funds for to make sure that those families are able to come in, get games, play, have dinner, do the games with their family. They get to go home with a game and a book. So that's a special event for both their Title I and bilingual families. To share with the board a couple of, I think, two more pressing events coming up here in April. So we have the Teacher of the Year banquet. That's on April 21st. And we have one, possibly 2 seats there. I'll have to confirm exactly how many guests our Teachers of the Year are bringing with them to see for sure. But definitely 1 seat reserved, possibly 2 for Teacher of the Year banquet on the 21st. And then we also have 2 seats available for the all-academic banquet, which will be at Zuccaro's on April 28th. So I'll send an email reminder out as well, but just wanted to get that on everybody's radar to see who wanted to go to which of those.
I was thinking 28. Yeah.
Just a word, I'll lay the whole floor down, okay.
And then a little bit farther out, but just again, so that you have it kind of on the far radar, the MESB Annual Leadership Conference is October 15th through 18th in Lansing this year. So I'm going to start thinking about who may want to attend that. October 15th to 18th. Yep. And then changing gears. Maybe get the second one. So it is time for us to, even though we, of course, still don't know if the bond will pass or not in May, although certainly hopeful, it is time to determine the method of sale, because we do need to have that prepared ahead of time, because especially now, given our timing of this election, all of the bonds would need to be sold by June 30th. So if we don't know definitive yes or no until May 5th, we need to have a plan in place going into that so that we would be able to hit the ground running immediately after the election if that passes. So keeping in mind, there are the two options for bond sales, so the competitive versus the negotiated bond sales. So kind of the simply way to put it, so with competitive, we're going to be told, this is the date that it's going to be done, and it's kind of out on that open market. There's not, let's see, I guess the advantage would be it's not impartial to one firm. The competition makes it an incentive to all underwriters for lowering the rates, but again, it's that kind of locked in date as far as that goes. No matter what else is going on with the market, that's the date that we would be given. Whereas the negotiated sale, we would work with an underwriter. And so this was the direction we went last time, which the benefit of that is twofold. I think I would say two things that stood out to me. Local community members then have the opportunity to buy bonds. So over $750,000 of bonds were sold to residents of the district the last time, again, and that can be accomplished through a negotiated sale, whereas you wouldn't necessarily see that with the competitive. And the other piece is there's the opportunity to kind of play the market a little bit with when we do the sale. So if something, we know, things are a little, can be unexpected right now, especially in the political climate. And so if we were thinking, hey, we're going to do it next Tuesday, and something crazy happens Monday night and the market takes a tank, we can then work with our lender and say, hey, we want to hold off another week and see if things settle down, and we would have that opportunity. So there's just that flexibility in timing, I guess, if you will. Again, we don't have a ton of time to play with, but within the time we have that flexibility, and again, that opportunity for local community members to purchase bonds, which seems like that was important to our community if we sold over $750,000 the last time. So we did work with Raymond James the last time in 2019. Tammy and I had an opportunity to talk with the previous representative, which was Paul Soma. So he is still with the company, still very familiar with everything that we did in the previous bond, very familiar with Richmond, very familiar with the Metro Detroit and Michigan area. So that is one option. We could certainly explore other options, but that is something we'll need to make a decision on, again, probably between now and, I would say, the next meeting, have a conversation and make a decision on which way we want to go. If we want to hear other presentations or other information from other potential bond sales, we can do that, but we just really need to have that plan, or kind of a plan in place before the election so that we're able to go quickly afterwards.
So do you want our input
Sure.
for
So
the next meeting?
Yeah, if we want to think about negotiated or competitive, and then if we want, if we're comfortable with continuing with Raymond James as we have in the past, or if we want to hear from other competitors as well, I can bring their information as well.
So the idea, we would get this all prepared, ready to go, but we don't vote on anything until the bond passes. So would it be something when the bond passes on Tuesday night, we maybe have a meeting the next day?
That's kind of what I'm thinking.
That would be the idea?
Certainly that week, I would say, yeah.
Well, I don't need to email you or anything. We've had great success. Raymond James and the negotiated was very successful. So I would say that we would want to do the same thing. That's just my great, so you don't have to wait to hear.
I'm just thinking if anybody on the board has any thoughts or suggestions.
No, yeah.
Different.
Yeah.
Please let Billy know so that we can have a discussion if we need to have it. If we're all in agreement with what we're currently doing, or we did.
Yep.
I'm sorry, I interrupted you.
No.
And then my last piece, again, all of mine kind of straddle between district or legislative. So my legislative piece this week is kind of personal to us. So we know that we have to do the benchmark assessment every year, right? We have to do that, so we use NWEA. Historically, the state has reimbursed us the cost to test our kindergarten through 8th graders as though that's required, and then we go a little above and beyond into the rest of our district and test our high schoolers as well. So pay a little bit, for that, but they're reimbursing essentially almost the full cost for kindergarten through 8th grade. In the past, maybe up until 3 years ago, maybe 3 years ago, what our district did, and all of the Macomb County districts, is we would, and our scores would be through the NWEA program. We would pull our scores down and send that over to the ISD, and where their IT team would put together disaggregated test assessment scores that gave them all the information that they needed for their comparisons that they do across the state. And so the ISD would send that for all of our Macomb County schools, and that had always been the way that it was done. Like 2 or 3 years ago, they started using the data hub for that data collection. Again, in Macomb County, we were allowed to continue submitting our data the way that we had been doing before, which was it would go up to the ISD, they would disaggregate the data, and then they would send it to the data hub in that disaggregated fashion. But for those couple of years, no problem, they were able to get what they needed. This year, MD pushed back a little bit more and really said that we had to do it, that we had to go directly from NWA to the data hub and wanting to kind of skip that ISD step and therefore skipping the option to disaggregate the data. So basically wanting full access to the full data that is in NWA for all of our students. They have said that, they aren't pulling anything besides what we've ever given them. And so it's difficult for us to sit and believe, well, if we're giving you what you are asking for through this disaggregated method, why do we have to change, right? What's different? We're giving you exactly what you need. And so at this point, the only school districts across the state of Michigan that are still fighting to be able to submit our data the way that we have in the past and not give MDE that open access to pull data from NWEA themselves is us, Van Dyke, East Point, Utica, Warren Consolidated as far as Macomb County, and then Grand Rapids Public Schools is the only additional school outside of Macomb County. So again, this year we did submit our data in the fashion that we always have. They took our data and they didn't ding us, I guess you wouldn't say, on that. Our data was submitted. But then they kind of said, well, this is the last time that we're letting you do it this way. You won't be allowed to do this in the future. And because you didn't submit it the way we wanted you to this year, they're reducing our reimbursement by 25%. So the 5 districts that I mentioned, we've had regular meetings not only with each other, but also Gary Collins is the one that is the attorney that's working for us to try to remedy this situation. But I looked and I went into the grant system, into Nexus, where we house all of our grant things. I wanted to double check on what that reduction was, what the 25% reduction was for us. And they had already moved that money from Nexus. I don't know that's where Tammy has seen it yet on her state aid reports that she's getting, but in Nexus, which is where that's going to come from, they had already taken that 25% out of our grant reimbursement. So I just want you to be aware of that's going on. For us, that reduction, we were awarded $12,868 at the beginning of this year as our full reimbursement. And so currently, that reimbursement was reduced down to $11,778, so a reduction of $1,090. If things do not go well, and they are insistent, and they absolutely will not accept our scores in any other way, then essentially we're talking 31AA again, and they would take away that $12,868 or whatever the reimbursement amount is from this point forward, if we don't submit our scores the way they're asking us to, which is to give them the full access of NWA. And, you know, one of the things that really has concerned those of us that have been part of this conversation is it's not even for that current group of students. Once they have that access, they can go back as far as they want. There's no indication of when this would end. You know, they are essentially acting on behalf of the school. We have to sign that over to them, that they are essentially an entity of the school that we're allowing to pull that data from NWBA. And I'm sure sitting here, that's a concern for those of us at this table. It's a concern for the 5 districts as we are on our calls and our conversations together. It's surprising to us that there are other districts that are pushing back. And again, much like we had the conversation with 31AA, it's hard to understand, you know, where others aren't seeing what we're seeing and aren't pushing and fighting for what we're fighting for. So we are still fighting. Like I said, we are still back and forth with MDE on this and about, you know, really just trying to have them help us understand what it is that we aren't giving them what they're asking for. I mean, that's really the bottom line to me, is we're providing what you're asking for, but that's somehow still not good enough.
The bottom line is, they don't care about all of that stuff. They're just saying they're going to cost us. And I think we said the last time we talked about it, we weren't interested in doing it differently. So I guess you throw the $12,000 into the budget talk, right? Because you can still, you still have to submit all the information on the record. You're just now paying for it yourself because you don't want to play that game with the state.
What does that cost look like?
So yeah, and we pay a little.
We're losing $12,000.
Right, we pay a little more than that annually. Like I said, we test beyond the minimum amount. So we do test up through 12th grade. They're only in reimbursing kindergarten through 8th grade. They currently, I think it's just under $12 per student that they're reimbursing. The cost is, you know, I think a little over $12 actually. So I mean, there's less. Our bill at the end of the year for NWA would be over the $12,868, probably right around $15,000. So we're already paying extra, but now we would not be getting any reimbursement at all.
And what's the point of going all the way through 12th grade? What's our advantage in the whole scheme of things?
So we do utilize it for a lot of our intervention classes. We'll use that data to, you know, move kids in and out of those courses. It is a good indicator, especially when you take that spring one in like 10th, 11th grade. You're getting that indication of what the state assessments could look like. They have that crosswalk that kind of shows you from spring to fall. NWA to state assessments. We do also utilize ours for teacher evaluation purposes as well, so we want to test all of our students in that regard. But again, those are conversations that can be on the table.
Is there a cheaper way of doing the extra grading?
I mean,
when I say cheaper, I should say
something different that we could do, sure. I mean, we could definitely look at different options and see where there could be a savings, yeah.
Billy, can I ask a question? So if we submit the data the way MDE wants, what information are we worried about them accessing?
So they would have access to everything that goes up into NWEA for our students. So it ties back to the teacher, it ties back to, I mean, you have that full scope, it ties back to the individual student name and student number and all, I mean, those pieces are part of NWEA because that's how, you know, we're able to get our reports down to the student level, which we rely on from something like NWEA. We don't want that to be what the state is using. You know, we want them to just see that overall kind of cohort data, that overall data, because at the state level, they're not making decisions at a singular student level. You know what I mean? Like they do not need to look that granularly to make the decisions at the state level. And so why are they asking us for that level of student data down to that true, the student and their teacher and their score? You know, and again, once the way that we give that the access, if we were to do that, it's not even just that year. They could go back in time. They could, you know, I don't know when it ends. So
can a parent opt out of
Well, yes and no. So I mean, a parent could opt out of testing. I mean, there's not really an official way that the state gives you because it's mandatory. And I mean, so what if you just, you didn't have your child go to school that day and, you insisted that they weren't going to test, that could happen. If we don't test enough of the 95% of our students, then we would get lower marks at that overall state scoring if we don't test enough. So, that's probably not the ideal way to go. If too many parents decided, as a group, we don't like the direction that this test is taking us, that would be an important stand for them to take, but I would like to try to find a different alternative because they don't want us to go that direction.
I'd rather just pay the 12,000. I feel like that's the easiest thing.
I know. It's just that frustration. I mean, how many times do we sit at the table and say, okay, they're taking that away, now they're taking that. And of course, we have to stand the ground. It's frustrating.
It's a financial, that's where they think they have to. It's so precarious
And
what we do
And when
every
we're
year.
talking 12,000, think of Grand Rapids Public
Exactly.
Schools, right? I mean, I can't even, I think I'm one of the calls they might have said, I mean, they're talking a couple $100,000 when we're talking 12, for them, that's huge.
Right.
Yes, that was my list.
Okay, next item on our agenda is our items of interest from the board. Margaret.
Okay. I have two things. My first is I just want to, I don't know if it's defend myself or address our social media friends, in particular Amy Steyer, who, the things that I talked about the bond last time, and I quote, she said that I was very smug and almost mocking stakeholders by referring to social media friends. I didn't know what else to call those people. I thought it was a fair thing. And she didn't like my statement when I didn't like the failing school comment by somebody out there on social media when I said that it's not true. And she said that taxpayer parents could feel that way. Why wouldn't I listen to stakeholders? And she claims she's a parent in the district, which we all know she's not because her child doesn't attend Richmond schools. But just I want to point out to everyone, when I was talking about the social media friends and the failing school comments, the failing school comments were made by two people who do not live in Richmond. And the one said, I doubt it will help educate the kids in our failing schools, especially with so many leaving the system. The other one says, you can't vote enough money, you can't vote enough money into a school system to fix the root causes of their poor education. Why is it always more money will fix it? And so I believe that I have a right, and so does everyone at this table, that wants to get out correct information. That's what I'm looking to do. The people on social media, and everyone knows I don't do social media, but stuff is sent to me. I cannot stand it when people out on social media are negatively saying things, whether it's about the bond, whether it's about how we run our district, whether it's about board members, how they talk at meetings, when they're not factual. So if that is smug, then smug it is. But I believe everyone at this table feels the same way, that we want positive stuff and we don't want people who don't live in our community. There's another person that's out there, and the name escapes me right now, that is going to town with negativity, and they homeschool their kids. They don't even know anything about our school. I have a problem with that. And I'm here and not listening to stakeholders. I believe that my stakeholders are the kids that we come to school here every day, that we educate, and every staff person who works here, whatever job they have in that district. Those are my most important stakeholders. And after that, taxpayers are my stakeholders. And that's why everything I do as a board member is to be fiscally responsible. And the things we have to do with this bond are fiscally responsible, and we need this because our system is so great. And people that choose to not send their children to our schools, that is your own choice, and every parent has to do their thing. But do not sit and call yourself a parent of students in our district, because you are not. And do not on social media make statements about who I am, whether I'm smug or I think I'm superior or whatever else. I think none of those things. I think that I work hard along with every single person at this table. And I believe that our kids need the best school system, and our staff need it too, and that's what we're all sitting here. So if I want to call out friends in social media, I will continue to do it when they are saying things that are negative and absolutely false. We are not a failing school system, and I will stand on top of a mountaintop and say it. We are not. And if people out there want to say we are, you better get in our buildings and see what's happening. So that's my defense of myself. I'm done.
You didn't have a second item?
I forgot it now. I got myself going. No.
Okay.
No, I think one is good for today.
Okay. Sandy?
I do have several things. First couple things, I also want to talk about bond a little bit, or defended, I guess, a bit. There's a lot of misinformation out there, and two of the things that I keep hearing on social media and otherwise is that there's been like a mismanagement of funds from the last bond. And I just think that's absolutely not true information, as obviously we all know here. I mean, there are, in the past, we set aside money for the field, for buses, for computers to be responsible, fiscally responsible to our stakeholders, so we don't have to go back to them and ask for that money again. We haven't done this, not like we're like, hey, okay, wait, now we need this, now we need that. No, we need what we have, the proof is there. We're running out of space, period. So I don't, in the past, we have not been irresponsible or mishandling the funds. That's just not how it's done. You can go on and see where everything went. Also, last thing, or another thing I've been hearing a lot of is, well, like, you know, the stakeholders have already spoken, you know, why are we doing it again? Why do we have to vote again? And I just, you know, I want to say, actually, we really didn't, because the voter turnout was so low. I don't feel like it gave a very fair assessment. I mean, if we had a astounding no, then of course, I mean, I'm not sure what we would do or how that would look, but yeah, I mean, okay, then I would take that. I would, okay, that's not what the public wants. It's not what we got to move forward somehow, some way. But that's just not what we got. We didn't have a lot of voter turnout. So I mean, like I said, that's what I'm looking for. Whichever way the vote is, I prefer to have a lot of feedback, a lot of voter turnout. So that's what I have to say about the bond. The second thing I want to talk about is I did get an email, which I think you guys were all copied on, in regards to the budget meeting at the ISD. I know Danielle, our treasurer, she said she's not able to attend, she'll be out of town, so looking for somebody to attend that meeting, because I also am not able to attend.
I can go.
Okay.
I checked my calendar, so I can go.
I will try to go as well, so we have some people there, but I mean, I don't know that I'm going to be able to. But I will put that down. And then that's April 23rd at 6:30. Okay, then I also wanted to talk about, I've been attending the legislative meetings for Ray while he's out, and I did go to the one on the 10th of April, and they talked about the governor's budget proposal or whatever. They talked about the $250 per person, which I know we already talked about, so I'm not going to rehash all of that, but there are a couple of things that they did mention as well that I thought were interesting, that they're taking, apparently they're taking away, what is it, like 75 million or something like that out of the school aid fund budget for like Boys and Girls Clubs and things like that. So they don't tell us all this money that they're taking away from us and they're going to give us $250. So just everybody should, you know, educate themselves on that. But they are thinking about doing a letter to the legislators. And I did give you guys all a copy of that sample letter Not asking for you to read it right now tonight or anything, but there also is some key points that they want to make in that letter that I gave you guys. And they're looking for us to, I think, sign this letter, is the way I understood it. So I, of course, obviously would not be doing that without, input from the board. But there are a few things on here I think that you guys should look at, especially on the key points part, that they are going to make in regards to some programs and things. There are some things on here I don't necessarily agree with, so I wouldn't feel comfortable necessarily signing myself. So I suggest you guys look at them, and for example, they're suggesting doing away with the free lunches, because that would save so much money. A lot of people indicated they thought it was kind of a bit of a waste. That's not the same opinion I share. So just if you want to look at everything and just, give me your feedback by the next board meeting, because the next meeting with them is the day after. So our next meeting is the 13th, but the legislative meeting is the 14th. So if you can, hopefully I can give them feedback in regards to, they're asking for feedback, asking, for us to look at these things and see if we agree with them or not. So I'm just looking to bring feedback to them about what we would be, I guess, basically what we would be against on this letter, like what would stop us from signing this letter.
So this is the legislative people.
Yep.
Are asking school boards and districts to sign
That's
this?
the way I understood it, that they would be asking, and I don't know if it's probably not next month, but in the near future, yes. And so they are looking for our feedback. So yes, that's the way I understood it. So I was hoping to be able to bring.
It's not anything that we as a board want to do a letter.
No, this would be for all
districts.
districts, all the
Okay.
districts in Macomb County that
Got it.
hoping to sign it.
Okay.
Is the way I understood it anyways.
So we're to give you feedback by the next meeting.
Please.
Do we want to make it an agenda item or just you want feedback?
I mean,
Because
well, either way, I mean, honestly, I think maybe we do make the agenda item. I don't know. I don't know what you guys think. I think, yeah, we probably should. There's a lot of
I
things
think
that
we need to talk about it.
I do too. Okay.
Yeah, and if they're
We'll make sure.
expecting you to come back and with something,
Yeah,
Richmond board,
right.
things, whatever.
They didn't necessarily ask me to give it to the board. They asked, like, us individually to look at it and stuff, but I just don't necessarily feel totally comfortable with that, so. I feel
I
like.
think we should talk about it as a board.
Agreed, yes, that's why I brought it here. So yeah, if we can make an agenda item just so that we
Right,
can,
we'll do that.
give everybody a copy, give Cynthia a copy to send over to Ray as well.
Okay, good.
And then, okay, one more, okay. And I also do want to say this, and I know this probably isn't going to be a very popular thing to say, but I feel like it has to be said. Although I do appreciate the job that Ray Steyer has, I truly do. And I respect what he has to do. I do feel like he's doing quite a disservice to our district by not resigning before he had to leave because of the position we're currently in. Because now we are a board of 6 with the interim superintendent, and we are also a board of 6 that has to go through this process of hiring a superintendent and then also the budget stuff starting. I just feel like that has to be said. I really think that unfortunately, although he's maybe doing a great service for the country, he's doing a disservice to this district. That's all I have.
Thank you.
Can I just remember if I can, please?
Go for it.
I wanted to acknowledge and thank the people that are asking buying questions on our Just Ask page. I think that's huge, and that is a positive way to do it, and to get a direct answer on stuff, and I really appreciate those people that have been doing those questions. Thank you, sorry.
Okay, Sarah?
Just one thing, I'm going to ask one more time, Millie, I'm just going to keep bringing it up. I know back in the fall, we talked about standards-based grading, and I know you guys said that you had things already in the works for next year for at least the 8th grade to kind of help make the transition in 9th grade easier. And I know I've asked at a meeting, I know Ray's asked at a meeting, and I know it's
Coming
getting,
next time.
I'm going to say it's getting pretty late in the year, so is it on the next agenda?
Yep.
Okay, great, thank you.
Okay, Danielle?
I'm all set.
Candace?
Yes, so at our last meeting, we had the Richmond Masons come in and do a grant to Ms. Smith and their presentation, and they left us the Bikes for Books brochure, and I actually had the opportunity to attend the fundraiser on Saturday, and it was a ton of fun, and I just want to thank them for the invite because it was a great fundraiser to be a part of. There were a lot of the middle school 7th and 8th graders there, and tons of raffle baskets, and they just really made it fun. It was entertaining to say the least. So I just wanted to thank the Richmond Masons for that invite, and to once again thank them for everything that they do for our children. And then also the Cyber Safe Schools presentation. I can't say enough, I'm just going to try to sell it. I know Elizabeth already mentioned this, but for the middle school parents, this is a great, I attended one similar to this there a couple years ago, and I know they presented this to the kids at the middle school already, and my son came home talking about it, and it makes me now want to go and see what all they learned, because it was so informative enough that the kids are talking. So now the parents need to go and talk. It's good stuff. And I believe that's all I have for today. Thank you.
Okay. I just have 2 items on mine. First off, I want to thank Candace for running our meeting last meeting. I was unable to attend. I was where it was nice and warm. I took a vacation. I also want to add to Margaret's her comments about the Facebook page. I strongly encourage our public, please, instead of going on there, to call our superintendent, our interim superintendent, call our administrators, and get valid and correct information. Because a lot of what is out there, and I know exactly what Sandy's talking about, I know exactly what Margaret's talking about, I follow them, a lot of it's inaccurate, and I just wish people would take the time to call and get some accurate information instead of just spewing stuff out there that isn't true. So I just want to reinforce what Margaret said. Okay.
I'm sorry, can I just, I don't want to leave Sandy hanging out to dry on her comment. I just want to say that I support your stuff that you say. I want Ray to come home safely to his family, but it has been a disservice not having him here, and it is unfortunate that he didn't resign before he left. But so I don't want you hanging out there with the comment, because I know that some of us have talked about it, maybe not at the table, but I just support what you said. There's nothing ultimately we can do about it. He was elected to the spot, but yeah, it is unfortunate.
I would like to say, I'm just gonna, maybe I'm the only one that feels this way, but I felt like his commitment to the role, even being far away, was impressive. I mean, he is up at like 2 in the morning or something ridiculous, joining the meetings, all of our meetings, long meetings, hours long, and then he's working after. I was kind of thinking the opposite. I was thinking, man, if that was me, I probably would have resigned, and I really kind of held his commitment to a high regard. I know as of recently, and I don't think anybody could have foreseen the things that we're in right now.
Absolutely.
And obviously, he hasn't been here the last, 2 meetings or whatnot. But I
2 or 3.
Yeah, but I feel like
4.
opposite. I guess I feel like he's been doing a really great job. It would have been so easy for someone to go away and just kind of checked out. You're busy, you're doing other things, but he seems prepared. He reads through the material. He's joining. He's giving feedback. It's not like he's going off camera or sleeping or anything like that. I guess I just feel the opposite because I feel like he's done the things. I mean, recently, yes, he hasn't been here, but I think there are some things maybe beyond his control right now. But up until now, I haven't had any problems with his level of commitment.
Sarah, I'm not saying that he obviously things are out of his control, for sure. Like Margaret said, of course, the number one thing is I want him to come home safe to his family.
And I do have utmost respect for that, and I do believe you, I'm with you as far as it did start that way. But I think right now we're starting to get into some important things, and he hasn't been here, I don't think, in 4 meetings. And yeah, he's able to, and I can see if he was like, I understand he might be in a situation where he can't contact us, but we receive texts, so we know that he can correspond somewhat sometimes. And we haven't heard anything about it or anything in regards to even, when he may be back to, is he going to be back to these interviews? We have interviews coming up, we have budget stuff coming up. I don't know, I just think that it's, if you're going to miss all that important stuff, it's a disservice, but I already said my piece, so.
I mean, in his defense, because my husband works for the government, when they say jump, you say how high. You don't have a choice. Like, if they tell him he's not allowed to be on a camera or be on their internet, he can't. Like, that's beyond his control. So, like Sarah said, I would have easily just been like, I'm not going to be here for 9 months, like, and sign off, right? But when the government says no, like, he can't question his employer.
Absolutely.
Well said. On the board?
I agree with Danielle and Sarah. I'm just being that out there. Because he did, even the closed sessions he was part of, and it wasn't until this twist thing that recently happened that again was unforeseen. So we may be singing a different tune in a month or two when we're going through all that we're going through. I see the fears. I see it has been a lot on all of us with the bond, and I was just telling Deb that too. That the past couple of months has been a lot more going on here.
Our next item on our agenda is public comments. Since the last board meeting, the board had received one email in the form of a FOIA request. This email was forwarded to the board office, and the request was granted and sent out. There were no public comments that needed addressing from the last board meeting. At this time, any member of the public will have 3 minutes to address the board. Please sign in and state your name. If you wish a follow-up, please provide contact information on the public comment sign-in sheet. Are there any public comments?
Before I speak to what I came here for, Monday morning quarterback sitting back there sat in, so just a couple things. One is I was surprised in the budget discussion that the one-time expenses we discussed in December were not listed. That's several, at least $200,000 that you're not going to have for next year, but it's expensive. On the bond, you still have a November 25 chart listed there. It should be May 26 because the bond rating loses 2 years off the 20-year projection on the bond. On that chart also showed the additions on the middle school classrooms at the end of the 5th grade and 6th grade range, but on the flyer that was sent out, it's not. That was not part of the scope when I left here. So unless things have changed, you might want to correct that before. All right, now for why I'm here. I'm going to try to keep, we have 2 minutes here? About 30 seconds. So, I originally came here to talk about a item that the board discussed, I'm assuming discussed, so based on my prior knowledge being the superintendent, and approved back in January. And I had a prepared statement, but I'd like to go a different route. And if possible, I'd like to request a meeting with 3 board members. Can't afford because of the Open Meetings Act, I'd like to have a sit down. I don't believe you were given the full story when you made that recommendation and approved the settlement agreement with the former employee. So that would be my request. I know you don't have to honor it, but I did mark down here at least I would like to call for the board president respond. Again, I would like. In regards to I was the one that FOIA'd the request, which the public wants to know. I was the one that did it. In the agreement that you approved back in January, there are two statements that I don't know as a board and organization if you truly understand the impact. And I'm hoping that our district attorney explained that to you. And if he wasn't there, shame on the current administration. Section 8 agrees, and it's under the title of confidentiality, basically we're not going to talk bad about each other. And in there, there's a statement that says parties agree further that they will not disparage or denigrate or encourage others to disparage or denigrate the other party relating to the plaintiff's claim, which is the former Director of Human Resources. So my question is to you is, do you understand who the defendant is in this letter of agreement? Because that's defined in the very first part, which on the original document that I saw, I will finish it, but I just wanted to continue.
How much more time?
Yeah.
I have two items. It's up to the board's discretion whether you want to.
I would like to hear.
On the original document, under defendant, it defines the word defendant, and it said Richmond Community Schools. On the original document, Brian Walmsley was written in there. The document that you approved says Richmond Community Schools and its employees, past and present, agents past and present, board members past and present, attorneys past and present, and insurer. So my question is, you have now agreed to this mediation settlement, which gives the former director of HR $61,000, $12,000 to his attorney bill. Have you notified the employees that you have entered into agreement on their behalf? As a former employee, that's what you've done. I think I'm a current employee. I subbed twice in the district. And I'll know Wednesday if I get a check or not, whether I'm an employee. If I don't get a check, then I'll be back here next night. That's all the switch was. You took Brian's name out of it, and you put former and current employees. That's what I'd like to talk about further with the meeting of 3 board members. I could do it publicly if you like. That's the up to the board. That was my intent tonight, but we'll see how that goes. Second is regarding my post-employment benefits. I have no interest in changing my life insurance policy, which this board is obligated to. If the job was done back in 2018-19 when it was agreed upon by the board at that time, and the life insurance policy was issued, it would not cost this board now $30,000 a year for the next 12 years. That's all I'll say. I am not changing that policy. Don't bother looking for other policies. What was agreed upon was the life insurance policy that I had as a superintendent of this district. And I'll leave with this. ORS still has not finalized my retirement. In the latest communication last week, they're still waiting for the business office communication regarding my contract. So I hope my FOIA's information is not being held up by anybody in this organization. Thank you for allowing me the additional time.
I have a quick question. Does it matter what 3 members?
I don't.
Okay.
It doesn't matter to me.
Thank you. Are there any other public comments? Okay. Next item on our agenda is I'm looking for a motion to go into closed session. I'm sorry, is that Sarah? Do I have a support?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear what you said.
So,
Support.
I really think that the motion should just be a so moved. You need to say specifically what you're going into closed session for. And I don't think you.
Closed session for the purposes of strategy and negotiation sessions pursuant to MCL 15.268, Section 8C of the Michigan Open Meetings Act.
Support.
So,
Okay. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.